Good morning. Oh boy, here we go. Okay, so here's what you need to know about Act 5. So it's a really good idea for you to have this that does not have that on it. Open to page 1318. We're going to look at Act 5 a little bit. And first, what you need to know is that by now everybody's tired. So the actors are tired, the audience is tired, but Hamlet isn't over. Nothing's been resolved yet. There are some dead people. We know this. But what Shakespeare does now is he tries to insert a bit of comic relief in the form of several actors. So we have the clowns enter. So these are actually grave diggers. So when you see things changing in different versions, and some of you don't have your textbooks, so if you're looking online, you might see something like Digger 1 or Digger 2 or something like that. In this text, we have first clown and second clown. So before long, Hamlet will show up. And I'm not going to give away too many spoilers, but I'm going to give you some background. Okay, so at this time, everyone would know about the legal precedent that was set when a man committed suicide. And this goes back to the Hale versus Pettit case, which you could probably look up. I'm not going to talk too much about it, but I'll give you a little bit of the legal precedent to understand why it's a big deal that Ophelia is getting a proper burial and what these guys are talking about. So essentially, the two gravediggers are talking about Ophelia and judging whether she should be allowed to have a Christian burial. Really, they're just gossiping right here. So at the time, it would not have been proper had Ophelia committed suicide for her to have a formal burial, because suicide is essentially self-murder. So she would not have been blessed by the church and would not have been allowed a grave that had been marked, nor would she have been buried in the proper direction. So the first question that the first clown asks is she to be buried in Christian burial when she willfully seeks her own salvation? Meaning, when she willfully commits suicide. So he believes she's committed suicide. And the second clown says, I tell thee she is, therefore make her grave straight. The crowner hath sat on her and finds it Christian burial. So what he's suggesting then is that the priest has determined that this is proper. The priest is willing to suggest that her death is doubtful enough that she may be formally buried. The language has been vague enough throughout this and guarded that we don't really know. We have some ideas. Her dresses were heavy and she may have slipped. Her state of mind was messy, so she may not have known really what she was doing. But why was she standing so close to a treacherous bank if she was not inclined to end her own life? And maybe she did know what she was doing. I mean, her songs kind of lead us there. Her songs sing about requesting forgiveness and, this flower is for love and this flower is for rejection and blah, 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 all of these things. So if we think about the flowers, and we didn't really get to spend any time on that this past week, and we're going to move forward, but if we pay attention to the flowers, then we can make more sense of Ophelia's state of mind. She is basically, to our understanding, driven to madness, and her state of mind is not all that clear. So at any rate, what these two clowns are talking about is whether she should be buried formally, but they're also a couple of drunks. So the main guy refers to booze quite a bit, and he's actually the second clown. When he says, fetch me a stoop of liquor, he's talking about go get me a pint. And the first clown is more than willing to go do that, but he's a bit slow also, so he's not quite as smart as the second. So the legal precedent that's discussed, in which the audience would have had access to, refers to the vagaries of the laws regarding death, suicide, and murder at the time. And what you have to understand is that for a couple of hundred years before this play was written, the laws regarding murder and manslaughter were kind of hazy. And so basically by the time we get to this play, if a man who's murdered was killed by stabbing while he was drunk, then it could be argued that during se defendendo, or self-defense, the drunkard ran onto the sword, thus killing himself. Sounds kind of crazy, right? Basically, it suggests that the man holding the sword had nothing to do with it. So the same is true with Ophelia. And so they look at this, let's see. Okay, on page 1318, Around lines 12 or 13, the first clown says, "Give me leave." In other words, hang on, wait a second. "Here lies the water." Good. "Here stands the man." Good. Water, man. Okay? Wait, let me back up. Sorry, guys. I don't know how to edit, so you're stuck with me, okay? This is why I don't like doing videos, but here we go. Okay, let me go back up. Line 7. Okay, the first clown says, "It must be se ofendendo." It cannot be else. So self-offense is what that means. "For here lies the point. If I drown myself wittingly, it argues an act, and an act hath 3 branches. It is to act, it argues an act, and an act has 3 branches. It is to act, to do, and to perform. Argal, which means therefore, she drowned herself wittingly." The second clown's, "No, I hear you, but hang on, my friend Digger." The first one says, "Wait a minute. Okay, now, give me leave. Hang on a minute. Here lies the water." There's the water. Good. "Here stands the man." Good. "If the man go to this water and drown himself, it is willy-nilly," which is where willy-nilly comes from. "He goes. Mark you that." Okay, so he's saying if this man goes to this water, then that is an intentional act, right? Okay, but if the water, here's a man, here's the water, if the water comes to the man, different story, because now the man has nothing to do with it. The water killed him, right? Instead of him killing himself in the water. You with me? If not, ask a question. Okay, hang on. I just got a text message from Bird, and it's distracting me from my script. Okay, hold on. Okay. I do have a script. That's how, I'm serious. I'm uptight about this. Okay. If the water, man, water, if the water come to him, he drowns not himself. The water has then drowned him. Argal, therefore, he that is not guilty of his own death shortens not his own life. So this is the precedent that has been set, and it's in the Hale versus Pettit case, which goes back to basically a man committed suicide and the woman doesn't get life insurance as a result, and so she sues for that because she believes that he didn't commit suicide because did he die as an act of suicide or did the suicide cause the death? Right. Okay. Crazy laws. Anyway. Okay. Second clown, "But is this law?" The first clown says, "I merriest crowner's quest law." So what he says there is, if the coroner, that's what a crowner is, if the coroner, the medical authority, says this is suicide, then, and he says it outright, then the priest cannot give her a formal burial. But because we don't know, and the language is vague, we don't know if Ophelia intentionally went to the water, or if Ophelia is standing on this bank and here's the water and she slips and the water comes up to meet her. It's not suicide, right? Okay, so, okay, it goes on. The second clown says, "Will you have the truth in it? If this had not been a gentlewoman, she would have been buried out of Christian burial. Why there thou sayest, and the more pity that great folks should have countenance in this world to drown or hang themselves." So if Ophelia wasn't a woman of nobility, and she's not absolutely noble, but she does live in the castle with these people. She's the daughter of an advisor. More people, if they had more permission, they would just kill themselves, is what's going on here. But they're saying, there's no ancient gentlemen, but gardeners, ditchers, and grave makers. They hold up Adam's profession. So basically they're saying, okay, well, we have to do this because Ophelia has been deemed buriable, basically. And so now then the conversation moves into, we do good work, I mean, without us, society would not be upheld because basically we build the foundation, right? We dig and bury the foundation. Okay, so let's go back to Ophelia, and then I'll get back to the book in a second. Okay, so quick and dirty explanation about Ophelia's burial is that if she had drowned while she was insane, she really had nothing to do with it. The insanity killed her. Therefore, going to the bank, the insanity drove her to the bank of the river. If she slipped, that's neither here nor there. Once she's in the water, she's basically blameless. Now, if we go back in the text, we would see that Ophelia didn't do anything about getting out of the water. The report that Gertrude shares is that she just is singing these old songs, and she's not really working to get out of the water. Her dresses would have been very heavy, though. It would have been difficult, but there didn't appear to be any struggle. It looked like Ophelia was basically peaceful in the water. So that's where the language gets vague. At any rate, these guys recognize, and they're informing us that she's blameless, so she gets her proper burial. The second clown says in the first couple of lines, "I tell thee she is, therefore make her grave straight. The crown hath sat on her and finds it a Christian burial." So this means bury her in accordance with a formal burial so she can receive her last rites. Also, if she had been buried crookedly, like facing in the wrong direction, not east to west in consecrated ground, then she would be forced to walk in purgatory for eternity. That was the belief. Remember, so this is formal Protestantism. I don't know a ton about Protestantism except that it's very rigid. And if you think about Claudius, Claudius comes back because he wasn't relieved. I mean, he didn't have, holy cow, this video is getting long. Okay, I can talk for a long time. All right, so let me get back. Anyway, the gravedigger is making fun of this law. That's what's happening here. The audience would have enjoyed this because he's arguing that Ophelia killed herself to avoid killing herself. I know it sounds wacky, but that's the point. She allowed herself to drown singing songs and old lauds, but not working to save herself so that she would avoid killing herself. It kind of makes your head spin, but that's how the humor works. It almost distracts you from your grief, and it sets you up for what's still to come. Now, as an audience member, I mean, you may be feeling some grief over Ophelia. And really, I mean, it's an exhausting play. It's been going on for about 3 hours now, okay? So this whole scene is essentially, or more likely, a satire of how the laws were kind of twisted and how a simple word or way of looking at things could change the outcome, which is just like Hamlet's insanity itself, which we really need to talk about next week, and I'm looking forward to your thoughts about this. So if Hamlet is insane throughout this entire play, then he can get away with a whole lot of stuff that he wouldn't have been able to get away with ordinarily, like murder, like Polonius and Claudius, and really anybody else who gets in the way of his revenge. We could make the case that he's responsible for Ophelia's death too. That one, he'd probably get off really quickly on the vagaries of the language there. So anyway, I hope that helps. It's only a little bit for Act 5. Act 5 is rich, and really these two guys are the best when it comes to wordplay and how they kind of mess around with the language and stuff like that. So pay attention, take your time, read it slowly, read it out loud. Pace. We've practiced all of these things. I mean, I know you had 2 weeks in and now you've got 2 weeks out with Hamlet on your own. And I know that's hard. I get it. But spend time on it. You might actually find a friend that you might actually really enjoy. So I hope you stuck it out with me for 13 and a half minutes. And that only covers like 2 pages of Act 5. But it's a start. You guys are doing great work. Hang in there. I miss you. And I will try to figure out how to turn this off. Have a good weekend.